Mitigation specialist means that I work with people like Elizabeth and ask the hard questions. She does. We have at least two other mitigation, two of our best in the house, so thank you for what you do. Before I introduce Lynn, I want to introduce you to Juanita Ball, who is in the audience. Her son is on death row here in North Carolina. She does not want me to mention his name because his case is currently in post-conviction. She drove here from another city, and we're so grateful to have her here. I would like to speak on behalf of another father, a case I worked on that went to trial last year. Thankfully, he received life without parole. He had never been in any trouble and made a decision on a Saturday night that changed not only his life, but a lot of lives. I spoke with his dad, who is a businessman in Connecticut. His son, who is incarcerated, calls him every day, and the dad comes down from Connecticut at least once a month to visit his son. I asked him to think about, he couldn't be here, but I asked him to think about what he might like to say, and he sent me this in a text. Hi, Vicky. I still have trouble putting my thoughts into words. What I do know with 100% certainty that my love for my son is unconditional. Also, I now understand nothing is as simple as a headline makes it seem. It is alarming to think of how quickly life changed forever for Gary and for his loved ones. I lean on my faith and the family and friends that have prayed for me and Gary. The grief can consume you if you don't take things one step at a time. And now I want to introduce an amazing woman to you, Lynn Scott. She is going to speak first, and then I want to come back up and say a little bit more about her.
I'm gonna cry, so this is only the second time I've spoken since my brother's death, so just bear with me. In the years since Jack's death, I've had a few opportunities to speak in regards to what took place in Arkansas back in 2017. I've always known deep down that I had a story to tell, but never fully understood exactly what it is I am to share and with to whom. My story with my brother spans over 50 years, with almost half of them being while he was on death row. And although I was against the death penalty before he went to prison, I learned and experienced so much more over those years that my reasoning behind why I oppose it is so much more complex now. I saw firsthand those years that my reasoning behind why I oppose it is so much more complex now, sorry. I saw firsthand what takes place, and I can attest to what everyone associated with it goes through. The victims, and not just the family members of the one that was murdered, but all the new victims that that person's crime created. I don't care how strong of a person you are and how strong your faith is, and how you may think something like this will not affect you. Every single person who goes through an execution on death row will never be the same. I use the term victim very loosely at first, and I even received backlash from it. But the true meaning of the word is someone who is injured, harmed, or killed as the result of an action of another. And although Mary Phillips was the only one murdered back in 1995, my brother's crime created so many more victims, many who still struggle to this day and will continue to do so for years to come. There's no manual where one can turn to not only understand the process of how the system works when someone is sentenced to death, but how does one handle the process leading up to an execution, what takes place during the actual execution itself, as well as how to manage after that person is gone. Therapists have long been writing papers on the effects the death penalty has on various individuals. But our society, as well as our government, will have none of it. But then who is left to pick up the pieces when individuals are so deeply wounded by what they've experienced that they can no longer function in society? They turn to alcohol or drugs. They spend years in therapy, or worse, yes, they take their own lives. As forgotten victims, the pain that death row families go through is not validated by society. The attention we do receive is negative, and we are made to feel guilty for the association we have with a capital murderer. Many do not seek help because of the shame that they feel. And if they eventually do, their mental state is far worse than it was if they would have ever gotten help in the beginning. I myself didn't realize the help that I would need until an individual actually reached out to me after hearing my story and offered me help. I know it will take time to heal, and I've allowed myself to not put a time frame on it, but rather validate the fact that I am a victim, and however long I need, that's okay. But as I'm continuing to heal from what I've experienced, my heart still breaks for all the other victims that my brother's crime created. I had always prayed and thought of Mary's daughters and her husband over the years, and I even wrote a letter to them telling them how truly sorry my family was, and that Jack was truly remorseful from what he took away from them. I never expected to receive anything back from them, and even expecting their forgiveness was something that I never even hoped for. It was rather my heart breaking, knowing the pain they must be feeling. My heart breaks for you. Then when Jack's date was set again, for the third time, I traveled to Arkansas to go through hell and back. And now I have an even longer list of victims that my heart breaks for. I saw firsthand the pain and anguish the staff, the guards, and the warden at the Varner and Cummins unit were feeling. They were handed down the task of executing 8 men in 10 days, something that had never been done before, and Arkansas was making a name for themselves. Just because one of the drugs used in the lethal injection process was set to expire. Jack's lawyers and the lawyers for the other 7 men were scrambling to prepare for clemency hearings, which is something I'd never even heard of, and appeals. So that was the cause for sleepless nights, hours spent away from their families, and the anguish knowing that a life could possibly end if they did not do all they could for their client. Massive amounts of media swarmed in to cover this historic event, and not only media from the local area or even the state of Arkansas, but all over the United States and the world. It was a media circus that put Grady, Arkansas in the spotlight. They worked effortlessly day and night to cover what was taking place to a waiting world on the edge of their seats, wondering if indeed the state of Arkansas would carry through with 2 executions a day in the span of 10 days, starting the day after Easter. And in speaking with a handful of the reporters, I caught a glimpse of sorrow in some of them, because even though this was getting national attention, they saw firsthand the effects this was having on everyone. Law enforcement was brought in from all over the state to manage the grounds in and around the Cummins unit during that 10-day period. Their role was not only to monitor who was coming and going, but to make sure everyone was safe and that nothing negative took place, especially if protesters were in the area, and they were. And although I was privy to unethical behavior that was so cold-hearted that I even confronted them on it, I also saw kindness and mercy, and I have the utmost respect for the state troopers that night that were there night after night, leaving their families behind to tend to the safety of myself and others on the grounds. I also met and formed relationships with men and women fighting with various causes to abolish the death penalty. Some of them had no direct ties to the cause other than what they feel and believe, but some of them could relate to my pain because they too had lost a loved one. Either way, I was surrounded by new friends that truly cared for me and supported me during that time of my need. Their passion for supporting this cause day in and day out is truly inspiring to me. But at the same time, I know they must grieve when an execution takes place and they must feel as though their efforts are in vain. To fight so hard for someone's life and then it's taken must bring forth some sort of guilt. I applaud them for fighting so hard for Jack and the other men incarcerated with him that he considered family. And I will continue to support them in their efforts going forward. It's people like them who are making a difference in our states and our government. I will forever be connected to this barbaric act of murder because I can so closely relate to those individuals who have suffered, as well as those who will suffer under the death penalty if it is not abolished in the United States. I was an advocate for Jack for years. It was a position I wanted to walk away from so many times, but I chose to stay because of the love I had for my big brother. It was a position I took seriously, and I fought hard all the way until Jack's last breath at 7:20 on April 24th, 2017. And although that position is over, Jack's memory will live on and through me as I become a voice and an advocate for current and future victims that the death penalty creates. We are all on the same roller coaster ride, and I want him to know that they are not alone, that someone sees their pain and hears their cry for help. Together, we can weave our way through the twists and turns, knowing that once this ride comes to an end, even though we still feel a bit shaky, we have someone by our side helping us through.
I've only known Lynn for a few months, one of our own, Etta Blankenship, a mitigation person who lives in Pittsburgh, knew and knows Lynn. Etta's out of town or she would be here, I'm sure. Etta flew down to experience this event and support and love Lynn through this. Etta reached out to me and I asked, what could I do? And Etta said, I would really like for you to work with Lynn and help her process some of this. Thus, our journey began. One of the things I used a lot of resources and tools, and one of the things I had was cards, where you draw a card. I believe that each person draws the card they're supposed to have at that time. So Lynn would like to read to you. She had been struggling with this, knew there were words in there that needed to come out, didn't know how to share her story. She is sharing her story now, but she wants to share this card with you that really started it all.
So the card that I drew, it says, to be continued. You are the author of your life story. And despite what's been written so far, what do you want your story to be about? So that card sat on my desk for the longest time as the one-year anniversary was approaching to Jack's death this past April. And I knew that I had to do something, that Jack's death could not be in vain, nor anyone who's on the side of the victims and the inmates' families. And so, through a series of events, I went away to Asheville for a weekend and was able to start writing my story. This was just a piece of it, and 100 pages later, I'm finally able to get it out, and I'm sharing it. And for any of you that followed that, the BBC was in Arkansas. This got so much media attention. There was a documentary series out, and Jack's story is a part of it. And I will continue to be a voice however I can be. I think my passion and my heart is the victims, and you spoke about, there's so many, it creates so many victims. And the Lord is opening so many doors for me. If you've all heard of the show coming up called Lindy Lou, Juror Number 2, I never even thought about the jurors that sentenced my brother to death. about the pain that they feel as well. So I've actually reached out to her, and her and I are communicating now. So it's just, I love just being a part of anyone that will just hear what we have to say, because if anything I learned through my experience is there's so many forgotten victims that the world just doesn't care about who we are and that we do have a voice. And so thank you for letting me speak to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ronald Lavender, but I go by the spoken word name RL, the Gifted One. When Tessa matched us up, she matched me with a young lady named Dallas Rojas. And as the young lady was speaking about her brother Jack, she talked about some of those that they rushed to try to get out before their time expired. One of the men that I read about that Dallas gave me information I can't mention his name, but he was supposed to be executed, which he was this year, and a '93 murder, and the DNA wasn't tested, and the judge that tried him was having an affair with the prosecutor, and his attorney was so intoxicated that he didn't. It was like a comedy of just traumatic errors that they, everything just went terribly wrong, and so he didn't even have proper representation that he could have forced the judge to recuse himself. It's just the stuff I read just devastated me, and then you have to excuse me, I'm even more emotional because she revealed about her brother. April 24th was my birthday, so a man. Life is just snatched away on the day I was celebrating my life. So I feel privileged to be here, but at the same time, the emotions are just, I've never done anything for an event like this. So it's please be patient. The poem I'm going to do doesn't have a title, but I just thought about the injustices that we as my people have faced since we've been here. And so I wanted to entail, I had to read up about lethal injection in the process and the chemicals that, they put inside and the whole thing. And so when I read about it, that helped me write the poem, but at the same time, it was just like hard to write this and convey this. So please be patient with me. I hope I can do it justice, and thank you for the opportunity, Alice, for facilitating the opportunity for me to be here. And my prayers to those families, or those of you who have lost someone through this terrible process, and my prayers to the young lady who came, who's, I think her son is currently on death row. We got a dead man walking. We got a dead man walking here. We got a dead man walking. We got a dead man walking here. See the black community rides that lightning, a fully drug-induced, federally funded, endorsed reality show for American consumption. It's their pleasure for boss hogs to pull up the skirt of justice, bend over Supreme Court railings, and have their way. Like our melanin is buried treasure to unjustly justify while killing us makes the whole world go round. See, no Shawshanks get redeemed. Big Red don't get paroled and sail off with his buddy Andy at the end of our movie. Just a typical weekly mother-son chats that usually begins with, hello? You're receiving a call from a correctional facility. Will you accept the charges?
Come on now.
There are no Johnny Cochrans or Perry Masons greater than the patriotic masters who took us from Africa through the Middle Passage in naked, hungry, huddled chain masses, selling us off like car parts in antebellum auctions for bloody cash and stashes, whipping our men in front of their clans and humiliating bloody lashes, while raping our women, pre-Trump separating us by big house and field nigger classes. Cutthroat kitchen cut our feet off
while we make off in plantation kunta mad dashes. KKK lynching and freedom bus burning us in Jim Crow mashups. They grown from police baton beatings and drowning us in water hose splashes, to now cops shooting us on live TV and getting free passes. Burying our appeals and protests at the bottom of bureaucratic wastebaskets. It's a game to these bastards. A tisket, a tasket, death and destruction to the poor, more money for the upper classes. They chop up our civil rights till our family tree crashes, targeting black victims with lies the media heavily trashes. They care more about the flag than a Holocaust of black and brown hashtags. A race against time to see who can die the fastest, lethally injecting us with white supremacy gases, injecting potassium chloride, injecting driving while black, injecting make America Confederate again, injecting dirty judges and paid-off prosecutors, injecting oppression through travel bans, injecting tear gas in Ferguson, injecting bloodstains in Trayvon's hoodie, injecting 41 bullet holes in Diallo's dome, injecting tiki torches in Charlottesville, injecting 3 strikes and you're out, injecting I can't breathe from the lungs of Eric Garner, injecting the blackballing of Kaepernick, injecting building an anti-immigrant wall with governmental Build-A-Bear, injecting blurred body cam videos, injecting Emmett Till, injecting 4 girls at the 16th Street Baptist Church, injecting Rodney King, injecting for colored only, injecting imperial colonialism, injecting the extinguishing of the Panthers, injecting a Fortune 500 prison system with welfare rehabilitation, injecting George Zimmerman walking free, injecting Ben Carson blackface, injecting indigenous euthanasia, injecting a hell no from governors 5 minutes to midnight when attorneys are asking for clemency and mercy. We got a dead man walking. We got a dead man walking here. We got a dead man walking. We got a dead man walking here. You have any last words? Yes, I've been framed. I'm told an innocent